From Recorded Future News and PRX, this is Click Here. Abduweli Ayup had a simple dream. He wanted to open a kindergarten, a small, joyful place where kids could laugh and learn and speak their own language.
I started in 2010. First, I wrote about it. First, I wrote my dream and what it looks like and how we do this and all of my idea.
In most parts of the world, that would have been a sweet origin story. But in northwestern China, it was more complicated than that, something Abduweli didn't fully appreciate at the time. Perhaps because he was so busy doing what dreamers do. He scribbled down his vision, found a few backers, gathered a handful of wide-eyed toddlers, and opened the schoolhouse doors. And at first, the hiccups were the kind you'd expect at a preschool.
And the first day, the one kid, she wet her pants. I cleaned it because, the
Memories.
parents, because the parents didn't give me diaper.
After that, he kept a supply of diapers on hand. And before long, word spread about Abduweli's little school. Parents lined up, literally, hoping for a spot.
Yeah, we have 3 years of waiting list. Just imagine.
So he opened a second school. And this one had a name, the Wisdom of Happiness.
We call it Wisdom of Happiness because we want kids to be happy.
But in China, happiness in the Uyghur language can be interpreted as defiance. And defiance can be dangerous.
The wisdom of happiness got you in trouble.
No, the happiness put me in real trouble.
Because the language those children were speaking was Uyghur. And in Xinjiang, preserving your culture, your language, isn't seen as an act of pride, it's seen as an act of protest. I'm Dina Temple-Raston, and this is Click Here, a podcast about all things cyber and intelligence. We tell true stories about the people making and breaking our digital world. And today, the first in a 4-part series on how authoritarianism begins. Not with tanks in the streets, but with quieter moves, like a book taken from the shelf or a rewritten school lesson. Our story starts in northwestern China, but it doesn't end there. Because when governments, from Moscow to Mississippi, start demanding sameness, when difference becomes defiance, what's happening in China stops being foreign policy and starts feeling like a warning. Because cultures don't disappear overnight. They're dismantled, deliberately, piece by piece. Stay with us.
This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com.
You're listening to Click Here. I'm Dina Temple-Raston. If you were to tell a young Abduweli Ayup that his people were oppressed by the Chinese, he would have been surprised to hear it.
I didn't feel any discrimination when I was really young because there is no Chinese to discriminate us.
Han Chinese make up about 90% of China's population. But in the far northwestern reaches of the country, where Abduweli was born, most people are Uyghur, a mix of Turkish and Asian ancestry, a Muslim minority with their own culture and language. In fact, for Abduweli, Chinese was literally a foreign language.
I don't know Chinese speak Chinese. I assumed all of the people are speaking Uyghur.
Was Chinese sort of like a foreign language? The same way we might take French or Spanish?
Yes,
or
it's a foreign language, yeah. One of the foreign.
Got it.
Yeah.
But as he got older, he did start to notice some small things, like no one in his school books looked like him.
And I asked my father why, and he said that don't ask these difficult questions. You will understand when you grow up. So when I was young, I really wanted to grow up because I really wanted to know.
When Abduweli Ayup was a teenager, the landscape around him in northwestern China was beginning to shift. A mining company had discovered valuable minerals in a nearby mountain, and almost overnight, Chinese soldiers arrived to guard what had suddenly become an important site. One afternoon, Abduweli was riding his bike, just a kid out with his friends. Chinese soldiers were a fixture in Xinjiang by then, and everyone knew the routine. You pass them, you stop, you nod, you show respect. But that day, his friend looked at him and said, "I dare you, ride right past them. No stopping, just pedal."
For us, if anyone can pass that line without saying hello, we feel ourselves, we are hero.
It was a game.
Yeah, it was a game. We are kids. How do we know?
The soldiers weren't playing. They surrounded Abduweli and beat him with sticks and the butts of their guns. His father had to pull them off. That night, Abduweli couldn't even sit down. But it wasn't just the violence. There were smaller humiliations, like they'd invite soldiers to eat fruit from their orchards, but instead of picking it, the soldiers would shoot it off the trees, leaving their orchards littered with bullets. Or they'd shoot people's pets. It seemed just for fun, just to remind everyone who was in charge. Even the local library wasn't immune. One day, Abduweli walked up to the desk and asked for books in Uyghur, and the librarian looked at him and said they were gone.
She said that I couldn't give you those books because those books are banned. At that time, she cried because very few books, and the books are banned.
That's how it starts. Not with explosions, not even with words, but with missing books. A quiet dismantling. Abduweli's father had always been loyal to the Communist Party, but after that beating, Abduweli started noticing these subtle shifts in his dad.
Before, my father just collect books randomly. Then he started collecting books deliberately. And before, he doesn't read a lot about history. Then he started to read about history and then talk about it.
His dad kept those books in a secret box, his own quiet rebellion against forgetting. And that small act of defiance planted a seed in his son. When it came time for college, Abduweli chose linguistics. He'd started to understand the power of language, and he wanted to protect it and preserve it. Eventually, that took him to graduate school, in Kansas of all places. It was a long way from Xinjiang, but the questions that haunted him about identity and belonging, they came with him. And then something happened. Something small and personal, but it hit like a lightning bolt. It happened after he enrolled his daughter in a local Kansas preschool.
When she came, she speaks Uyghur fluently. She was perfect in her Uyghur, but she lost her language in the US in 6 months.
6 months. And while this was something he'd been studying, it felt different when he saw it happen to his own family.
As a linguist, I knew how language will disappear. Three generation, blah, blah, blah. This is a theory. I know how language will die. That's my major. But when it came to me, when my daughter lost her language in 6 months, and I said, no.
And that was the moment he realized that language isn't just how we speak. It's how we remember who we are. It's how identity takes root. And once he saw that clearly, he started to see something else. That language doesn't just bind families, it binds culture and movements. It builds solidarity It makes organizing possible. As Abduweli put it, language is what turns lots of grains of sand into stone.
Like the language is just like small pieces of the sand. And language just collect us as a stone, bind us together. And if we don't have that language, everyone can step us, can destroy us, can do anything.
And do you think that the Chinese government understands this and that's why they're trying to sort of stamp it out?
Yes, they understand us. Like they want us to live as an individual, as a 12 million Abduweli and 12 million guys, not as a nation, as a people.
And it was there in Kansas, in the land of yellow school buses and PTA meetings, that Abduweli had this idea. He knew that language didn't begin in textbooks. It started way before that, on playgrounds, in lullabies, in the first words spoken at home.
Yeah, and then I remember that, do we have a Uyghur kindergarten? No, there is no Uyghur kindergarten. All of the kindergartens are Chinese kindergarten, like quote-unquote bilingual kindergarten, but in reality it's Chinese kindergarten. Because of kindergarten, we are losing this language.
And that's when it hit him. If the loss begins that early, maybe the solution does too. Maybe a preschool could keep the Uyghur language alive. He couldn't wait for someone else to act. He would go home and build something no one else had. A school where Uyghur would be the first language children heard, not the one they forget. A quiet rebellion.
And then I thought that, this is the way. Let me start with this.
It was a simple idea, really. But in China, where culture is managed by the state and identity is treated like a threat, his idea was not so much a school as a quiet rebellion. After the break, Abduweli and a handful of toddlers walk into what Beijing authorities would later treat like the most dangerous classroom in China. Stay with us.
Elon Musk, Doge, and Donald Trump are weaving a web of technological corruption.
Suddenly, the eyes of the industry are open to things that had been obvious to lots of other people for months. Isn't it a conflict of interest that the president of the United States, who regulates crypto, has his own coin?
I'm Lizzie O'Leary, the host of What Next TBD, Slate's podcast about tech, power, and the future. What Next TBD covers the latest on how Silicon Valley is changing our government and our lives. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
When Abduweli returned to China, he went to work trying to build his kindergarten. He started gathering support, looking for investors. And his pitch was simple.
Look, this is the way to keep our language alive.
But even that was too bold for some.
And they already afraid of my idea, about this promoting Uyghur language.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a dangerous idea.
Abduweli wasn't breaking the rules. He was working in the margins, teaching children in Uyghur before the law had a chance to say he couldn't. The Mandarin language was mandatory in primary school, but for kindergartens, the rules weren't so clear.
There is no clear policy that kindergarten should use Uyghur, should use Chinese, what language should use in kindergarten.
So he slipped in through that gap. Finally, his brother took a chance on him and invested $80,000. And then, in another stroke of luck, a friend offered him a building for the school. Abduweli started recruiting, just 6 students to start. And with that, the first Uyghur language kindergarten was born. And they gave it a name that mattered.
We call it Nurhan. Nur means light, Han means king, light of king.
It looked like any kindergarten, with nap time and snack time and then music time. The children began each morning with a song in Uyghur. Not a protest song, just a melody in their own tongue. And for Abduweli, that was enough. He'd sit in the front row smiling, because this wasn't just music. This was language, alive and out loud. And he had other ideas, unconventional tools to keep Uyghur alive.
At that time, I used Dora.
Dora the Explorer?
Yeah. Why I use Dora? Because there is an English part and there is a Spanish part, right?
Right.
The Spanish part I use Uyghur.
Wow. You just dubbed it over.
Yeah.
It wasn't flashy, but it worked. After a few short months of this, they got some official visitors. State security officers showed up asking for names and phone numbers and the list of parents who dared to send their kids there.
I expect that to happen, but not that quick.
And when they left, what went through your head?
I felt happy that they couldn't really understand my writing.
What do you mean?
Because I was not only writing about like the linguistics or kindergarten or something like that. I was writing about also about human rights. What should we think? Why should we think that way?
He was happy the officers couldn't actually read his curriculum, because he wasn't just teaching Uyghur. Abduweli had another goal: to teach kids how to think. Not how to recite, not how to follow orders, but to ask questions, to wonder and to doubt. Because when he had first started working with the kids, something felt a little off. They didn't act like kids. They followed every instruction, immediately, without exception, without complaining. There was no whining, no negotiation, no, oh, please, 5 more minutes. He'd call out nap time and they'd come right in and lie right down. If you've ever met a 3-year-old, you know this isn't how 3-year-olds work. So he pulled one of the parents aside and asked, why? Why are they like this?
I said, why your kids just listen to my word really carefully, just not act like a kid? She said, it's because of the former kindergarten. If the kids don't listen to them, they just beat them. That's why she's afraid. These kids learn that behavior. It's because of Chinese education.
In Chinese schools, asking questions and standing out isn't encouraged. It's discouraged, actually, systematically. Fitting in isn't just a cultural expectation, it's policy. So obedience is woven into every lesson, right alongside math and reading. And that's what made Abduweli's next decision feel almost radical, maybe even revolutionary. He gave the kids choices. No more forced naps, no more because I said so. They could choose what to eat, whether to sleep, whether to speak. It was a kindergarten, but it was also something else, a place where children were learning what it meant to be free.
So we didn't only teach kids language, we teach kids how to be an independent human being. We gave them choice.
So this was a kindergarten, not just of Uyghurness, but of love as well.
Yeah.
It worked. The school took off. 6 kids became 24, then 100, then several hundred.
I didn't do any advertisement, but people, I don't know, how do they learn? And then people started coming from different cities. Come and they recorded the schools and they make a video and like they spread it on their smartphone.
It spread hand to hand, phone to phone, mother to mother. And the kindergarten stopped being just a kindergarten. It became a movement. They started calling it the Mother Language Movement. A quiet revolution, one classroom at a time. But movements, even quiet ones, don't go unnoticed forever. When they moved to open a second school, the new director did something different. He filed for a permit. The government said no, so he posted the rejection letter online.
He rejected by local government, and then he posted it online. And then it became a social phenomenon. Like people all started to talk about it.
And then it went viral. The thing is, Abduweli never filed for a permit for the first school. He knew they were safer under the radar. But the director of the second school took the opposite approach. Each day he applied again. Each day he was denied, and each rejection posted. What started as digital dissent slipped into the real world. People started to gather at the government offices, demanding answers, wanting accountability. And eventually, the government blinked. The school was approved. And while it felt like a win, it wasn't a safe one. Because in going public, the director had crossed a line, one Abduweli had spent years carefully navigating. And the response was swift. Police began harassing the staff. One by one, they quit. Then the director himself stepped down. And finally, the landlord pulled the lease.
And then, the place we rented, she said that I'm not going to rent this place anymore. And we said, we have 5 years contract. Our school paralyzed because we can't get that money back.
They had to shut down, though pieces of it were still there. Blankets, toys, stacks of children's clothing in heaps in empty classrooms. Things that kids had touched and played with, but were left behind because their parents were too afraid to retrieve them.
We had 2 big rooms full of the students' clothes and the students' quilts and the sheets. 2 rooms full of those items which students use in daily life. Think about it.
And he did. The movement had grown too quickly, too publicly. And now it felt like it could break, or worse, even explode if people heard about the shutdown.
Because, look, there are online 1.5 million people are following us. They will take some action against the government. Bloody clash will happen. And then people will be arrested, and the people who followed the movement will be in trouble in the future. I don't want that to happen.
So he created a story, a way to quiet the tension. He rented a new building nearby and told everyone that the school was simply relocating, nothing to worry about, and invited volunteers to help renovate it for students he knew would never be there.
And then there are more than 100 people who are helping to renovate the school because it was an old school deserted, and we are just working on electrics, and somebody working on the painting, somebody working on installing the toys for the kids. I am doing this, but I know I'm fooling the people.
He kept up the act to keep the peace and to buy time to figure out his next move. But that time was cut short. One day, during the renovation, a black car pulled up. Security officers stepped out. And Abduweli knew exactly who they were, but he stayed in character. He started walking to the car and told the volunteers he'd be just a minute.
I have visitors there, and don't stop, keep working. I will talk with them for a while.
And then he shook the men's hands warmly and said loudly so everyone could hear,
"Hi, guys. Hi. You are the parents going to send your kids to our kindergarten, right?"
But once inside the car, they cuffed him, took his phone, and pulled a black hood over his head. He'd been detained before, but this time, it felt different.
I thought that this is like the ending. I thought maybe they will kill me.
This time, it felt less like a warning and more like a conclusion. Because when regimes like this feel threatened, they don't tighten the rules, they tighten the noose. They don't just detain a man, they redefine him as a threat. Abduweli wasn't just being questioned, he was about to be turned into an enemy of the state. The police drove him to his house, and soldiers were already there, lining the street with their weapons drawn. His wife stood frozen in the doorway, his children tucked just behind her. As he watched, the soldiers ransacked the house, pulled open drawers, dumped out closets. They took files and devices, anything that looked like it might matter. And when they were done, they took Abduweli into custody. What followed was a year in a succession of different jails and hours of interrogation. Sometimes they locked him in a cage in the center of a cell, and 2 armed guards would be on either side of him. 3 interrogators were in front of him, and they would start to scream, "You're trying to create a separate country for Uyghurs."
Yes or no? I said no. And you are training resistance force to incite terrorism. Yes or no? No. And you met Uyghur politicians in Washington and you promised to work with them. Yes or no? No.
And then they reached for their metal batons, slid them under his arms.
And then they put electric shock.
And turned on the current. They did other things too, but Abduweli didn't want to talk about them. Some of it, he said, he'd rather forget. Eventually, he was sentenced. He got 18 months in prison and ended up serving 15. And when he walked out, the world he stepped back into wasn't the one he remembered.
I found the Uyghur homeland changed completely, just like day and night. Like every Uyghur neighborhood, like every 500 meters, there's a checkpoint, and every 10 Uyghur family controlled by one guy.
Each block had one guy assigned to watch the families. There were cameras everywhere, making it clear that every word might be recorded. Uyghurs now had to carry a special ID card. And if the authorities had accused you of wrongdoing, every time the card was scanned, a special sound would ring out.
When you swipe your ID card to get on the bus, and then do-do-do-t, the sound.
It was like a scarlet letter, he says, a digital tone that told everyone nearby, this guy has a record. And with that sound came some limits. He couldn't get a job. He couldn't rent a house. He began to fear for his family's life. So when a friend told him about a translator job in Turkey, he didn't hesitate. In 2015, Abduweli quietly left the home he'd worked so hard to preserve. And he's been in exile since then. First in Turkey, now in Norway, where he lives with his family. But even from afar, he hasn't stopped trying to help his people. He collects the stories of other Uyghurs who fled. He writes children's books, stories about memory, about identity, about home. And he keeps telling his own story, even though his family wishes he wouldn't.
My older brother said that you have to stop and you shouldn't talk because of it will be dangerous for us.
And then he got proof that his brother wasn't just being an alarmist. While visiting a fellow Uyghur exile in Turkey, he got the news. His sister had been arrested back in China.
And I felt really sad. And look, I just walked about 20 kilometers from his home. I walked back to my home. I couldn't even think to take a bus or take a taxi because, it is really hard.
It was heartbreaking. He knew she'd been arrested not for anything she did, but just for being related to him. This was the regime sending a message. You can run, but your family can't hide. Another attempt to silence him.
But the problem is, not only my sister, there are like all of my friends being arrested. All of my friends, all of the parents who sent their kids to me, and they being arrested. And how can I say that, yes, because of my sister, I should stop? What am I doing? They have also family. They have also kids. They have also sister and brothers like me. They know it will be dangerous, but they did to keep the language alive. They told me that this is our last defense. And when their life is in danger, how can I keep silence?
The schools he built? Gone. The first was turned into a re-education camp. The loophole he'd once stepped through? Closed. Mandarin is now the required language for all kindergartens in China. And Abduweli Ayup, the man who tried to save a language through children's songs and Dora the Explorer, he can never go back. So here's the thing about Abduweli's story. It didn't start with handcuffs. It started with silence, with books quietly disappearing from library shelves, with preschool lessons scrubbed of native words. Before the arrests, before the black hoods and interrogations, the cultural erasure was already underway. And we'd like to think that couldn't happen here, that democracies are different, that our systems are stronger. But that's what Abduweli's father thought too. Keep your head down, follow the rules, you'll be left alone. And he was wrong. More than 1 million Uyghurs are believed to have been detained in camps across far western China, cut off from their families, their culture, their language. We asked the Chinese embassy in Washington about Abduweli's story, and they wouldn't address his case directly. But in a written statement, a spokesperson said that, quote, people of all ethnic groups in Xinjiang fully enjoy economic, social, cultural, civil, and political rights, and that Xinjiang was, quote, a prosperous and stable place. But stability is not freedom, and silence is not peace. Next week, we meet someone fighting to keep the Uyghur identity alive, not for children, but for the whole culture. And he's doing it far from any classroom, in a corner of the internet he carved out for himself, a place built to hold on to what the real world is trying to erase.
And he was forcibly disappeared, and it took me a bit of time to realize like what happened to him. Because my parents were too scared to even tell me.
This is Click Here.
Looking for more of the cybersecurity and intelligence coverage you get on Click Here? Then check out our sister publication, The Record, from Recorded Future News. You'll get breaking cyber news from reporters in New York, Washington, London, and Kyiv, among others. And you'll see for yourself why it attracts hundreds of thousands of page views every month. Just go to therecord.media.
Here are some of the top cyber and intelligence stories from the past week. It's Tuesday, August 12th.
This makes me feel uneasy. If you're a Flow user like me, your information may have been leaked.
A jury in California decided that Meta crossed a line, a deeply personal one. The tech giant was found to have violated California state privacy laws by collecting intimate health data from the period tracking app Flow. Flow lets users log their menstrual cycles, pregnancy goals, and even sexual activity. And behind the scenes, it turns out Meta was listening in via some software embedded in the app that allowed the information to get fed into Meta's advertising algorithm. The original class action suit began in 2021, and while Flow settled and updated their privacy protections, Meta fought the judgment and lost. Plaintiffs want billions in damages, and Meta says it's going to appeal. The case leaves another lingering question. Is there anything big tech doesn't know about you?
President Donald Trump has his man to lead the office of the National Cyber Director.
After nearly 6 months of waiting, Sean Cairncross is in. The Senate confirmed his appointment as America's new National Cyber Director. The longtime Republican political operative and former COO of the Millennium Challenge Corporation, Cairncross made clear to lawmakers that he isn't a cybersecurity expert. He says his leadership expertise is what makes him the right choice for the job.
And so I look forward to working to do everything I can to make sure that our adversaries, our enemies, and criminals who operate in this space know that it is not a cost-free endeavor.
His appointment is a departure from the past. His predecessors, Chris Inglis and Harry Coker, both spent decades at the NSA before taking the National Cyber Director job.
Alert! Ransomware gangs target Microsoft SharePoint servers. Protect your network now.
The warning is urgent, and it comes from both Microsoft and the federal government. A flaw in Microsoft's hybrid Exchange email systems could let hackers jump from on-prem servers into the cloud. Microsoft quietly patched the bug back in April, but lots of companies apparently haven't installed the patch. There's no evidence yet that the bug's been used, but another Microsoft flaw was recently exploited to crack into hundreds of networks, including some in U.S. agencies. Now the Cybersecurity Infrastructure and Security Agency, or CISA, is telling federal agencies to patch their systems immediately. And if you're running an old, unsupported Exchange server, best to pull the plug. And finally,
if we're going to engage in the race to the moon and the race to Mars, we have to get our act together.
NASA Administrator Sean Duffy has big plans for the moon, a nuclear reactor up and running by 2030.
There's a certain part of the moon that everyone knows is the best. We have ice there, we have sunlight there. We want to get there first and claim that for America.
But it won't be easy. There are temperature swings of some 600 degrees, no easy access to water, and no spacecraft that can actually haul a reactor into space. NASA, for its part, says it can be done, but experts aren't so sure about this 5-year time frame.
Today's episode was written and produced by Megan Dietrich, Erica Gaida, Zach Hirsch, Dina Temple-Raston, and the lead producer was me, Sean Powers. It was edited by Karen Duffin, fact-checked by Darren Ankrum, and a lot of the music you heard in this episode was Uyghur. It was written and performed by Polat Easy Muff and Ben Livingston. We had other music from Blue Dot Sessions. Our staff writer is Lucas Riley, and our illustrator is Megan Goff. Our sound designer and mixer for this episode was Dante Hodge. Click Here is a production of Recorded Future News and PRX. In the second installment of our series,
more and more we're seeing that China is still trying to reach outside their borders in order to have that control, so that way they can try for that complete erasure.
That's Friday on Click Here's Mic Drop. We'll see you then.
If you're looking for a daily guide to cybersecurity news and policy, sign up for the Cyber Daily from Recorded Future News. It serves up the day's most interesting and important cyber stories from our sister publication, The Record, and then aggregates all of the big cyber stories you might have missed from news outlets around the world. Just go to therecord.media and click on Cyber Daily to get all you need to know about the world of cybersecurity right in your inbox.